When the Queen of Jaipur introduced him one evening, she expressed her devotional sentiment for Prabhupada and his movement. After lecturing each evening, Prabhupada would stay for a slideshow of ISKCON's activities around the world. One night, during the slideshow, Srila Prabhupada called Tamal Krishna over beside his Vyasasan. Quote, "Taking sannyas will be difficult now," unquote. He said softly, "Your wife will suffer too much." He sat back a moment while Tamal Krishna took in what he had said. Then Tamal Krishna leaned forward and said with determination, "One way or another, Srila Prabhupada, she is going to suffer. Either she'll suffer now when I take sannyas, or if I take sannyas later on, she will be just as unhappy. There will never be a time when she will want me to. So since the feeling is going to be the same, it might as well come now. Free me. She'll get over it." Prabhupada said no more, but he remained thoughtful. Later that night, after the Pandal program, he called for his sannyasi disciples, Subala, Madhuvisha, Gargamuni, and Devanand, and for his personal secretary, Shyamasundara. Gathering them together along with Tamal Krishna, he said, "Tamal Krishna wants to take sannyas. So what is your opinion? Should he take it or not?" Everyone agreed he should. Finally, Srila Prabhupada consented. "You will have to prepare things," he said. "Things are already prepared," Tamal Krishna said. Then said Srila Prabhupada, "Tomorrow morning we must have the ceremony." The next morning, Prabhupada performed a special ceremony in the Pandal, lighting the sacrificial fire and offering Tamal Krishna the sannyas danda. The women were angry with Tamal, but it was too late. After the ceremony, Prabhupada called Tamal Krishna Maharaj to his room. "You have given up a very good wife and a high position. Therefore, I'm giving you the title Goswami. Now you have to be in the same mood as the Goswamis, being able to preach all over the world and accept disciples." Suddenly, Prabhupada began to laugh. "I have been testing you," he said, "to see whether or not you were determined. So what will you do?" "I thought I would go with my danda," said Tamal Krishna Goswami, "and without anybody else simply wander around from city to city in India and preach about Krishna without any vehicle or anything, just like Lord Chaitanya did." "Very good," Prabhupada said. Tamal Krishna Maharaj offered obeisances and walked out. Scarcely an hour had passed. However, Prabhupada called him back. "This is not a very good proposal," he said. "If you want to do something, you should have some assistance and facilities at your disposal." Prabhupada then assigned a couple of brahmacharis to go with Tamal Krishna Maharaj for preaching. He also gave his new sannyasi his first assignment. Immediately after Jaipur, Prabhupada was planning to go on a festival in Nairobi, Africa. Yet in Ahmedabad, another program awaited him. "You go on my behalf to Ahmedabad," said Prabhupada. At Tamal Krishna Goswami's sannyas initiation, Srila Prabhupada had given him the sannyas mantra, a verse that describes the surrendered and devotional attitude of the Vaishnava sannyasi. Vaishnava sannyasi emphasize engaging one's body, mind, and words in ecstatic service to Krishna, as distinguished from the sannyasis of the impersonalists, who speculate on Brahman or sit alone in silent meditation. The Vaishnava sannyasi, by taking shelter of the lotus feet of Krishna, crosses the ocean of nescience and brings others across with him. As Srila Prabhupada was demonstrating, a Vaishnava sannyasi should travel all over the world, working with all his might to reclaim the fallen souls on behalf of Lord Krishna. Vaishnava sannyasi meant coming to places like Jaipur and preaching. It meant worshiping Govindaji in the temple. And it meant sending Radha Govinda to be worshipped by the devotees in New York City. It meant allowing women an equal opportunity to become pure devotees in Krishna consciousness. And it meant separating a man from his wife for the higher purpose of sannyas. Srila Prabhupada, although beyond the varnashram designation of sannyas, was nevertheless the best sannyasi and the creator of many other sannyasis, whom he instructed to follow in his footsteps. He said his sannyasis should do even more than he, making more followers, publishing more books, and establishing more ISKCON centers. Bombay, January 24, 1972. On returning to Bombay, Prabhupada was disappointed to find that the devotees had neither paid Mr. N nor moved to Juhu. Madhavesha Swami, whom Prabhupada had put in charge, frankly admitted his inability to accept the responsibility for such a difficult project. The disciple Prabhupada had originally deputed to handle such affairs was Tamal Krishna Maharaj. But now that he had taken sannyas, he had renounced his GBC duties for traveling and preaching. And Prabhupada was without a manager for Bombay. Already Prabhupada was doing most of the managing. But he couldn't do everything. He couldn't stay constantly in Bombay. Searching for a veteran disciple to manage Juhu, Prabhupada thought of Brahmananda Swami, who was still preaching in Nairobi. Prabhupada decided to fly to Africa and invite Brahmananda Swami to come and manage Bombay. He wanted to act swiftly so that ISKCON could take possession of the land. Even if Mr. N changed his mind later, once the devotees were living on the land, getting them to leave would be very difficult for him. Srila Prabhupada planned to fly to Nairobi immediately, and he wanted to carry large Radha Krishna deities with him. The deities he had previously sent to Nairobi had been broken in shipping. So this time, Prabhupada brought with him strong-bodied Madhavesha Swami to carry the 36-inch marble deity. With special permission from the airlines, Prabhupada boarded, followed by Madhavesha Swami, who held in his arms the 100-pound deity of Krishna. After setting Krishna in a place beside Prabhupada's seat, Madhavesha Swami left the plane and came back carrying Radharani. Prabhupada passed most of the flight debating with Madhavesha Swami, who took the position of the impersonalist. Prabhupada would always defeat him. "This is how you become a preacher," Prabhupada said. "You must be able to take both sides of the argument and defeat your adversary." That is what Chaitanya would do. Since Prabhupada's first visit to Nairobi 4 months ago, Brahmananda Swami and a few American devotees had rented a house near the city. They had recruited some African devotees, but had not yet developed the temple and ashram. Barely able to maintain their own simple program, they were unprepared to receive Srila Prabhupada properly. Typical of Prabhupada's stay in Nairobi was his arrival. No one was at the airport to meet him. The devotees were not even sure if Prabhupada was coming. Prabhupada's secretary had phoned Brahmananda Swami that Prabhupada was willing to come to Kenya, but that Brahmananda Swami should try to arrange a meeting with the president and schedule a big Pandal festival. Brahmananda Swami, however, had not even received a clear message of when Prabhupada was coming. At the airport, Prabhupada and Madhavesha Swami carefully put the Radha Krishna deities into a taxi cab and rode with them to the address of the ISKCON Center. Prabhupada rang the doorbell, and when Brahmananda Swami opened the door and saw his spiritual master, he cried out, "Prabhupada!" and bowed down. "What happened?" Prabhupada asked, standing beside Radha and Krishna. "Why no one came to pick me up at the airport?" Brahmananda Swami was unable to reply. No sooner did Prabhupada and his assistant Madhavesha became bedridden with hepatitis. Prabhupada had left his regular secretary, Shyamasundar, in India to work on a legal case concerning the Mayapur land. So he was now without a personal assistant. In Nairobi, Prabhupada followed his usual schedule of bathing in the afternoon and putting on fresh clothes. But one day after his bath, he found that no clothes were ready. When he asked for them, Brahmananda Swami explained that the African servant had washed them and put them on the line to dry. But when Brahmananda Swami had gone to get them, they hadn't been there. Apparently, someone had stolen them from the clothesline. Prabhupada tolerated the inconvenience without any display of emotion. That evening, when the devotees of ISKCON Nairobi gathered in the temple to hear Prabhupada speak about the Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada saw the different items of clothing stolen on the African boys. One boy wore the kurta, another the top piece, and another the dhoti. Prabhupada pointed this out to Brahmananda Swami, who immediately took the boys out and retrieved the clothing from them. When Brahmananda Swami returned the clothes, Prabhupada didn't seem to take the offense seriously, but only laughed. Prabhupada did not laugh, however, at the Nairobi devotees' bad cooking. When they served him white maize mush, he called it pig food. and the hard white chickpeas, he said, were suitable only for horses. Then Hare Kripa, a black devotee from America, went to the kitchen, boiled some vegetables, and served them to Prabhupada without any spicing. Prabhupada called it dog food. "You are still an uneducated African," he told Hare Kripa, and he went to the kitchen to cook for himself. Almost a dozen devotees joined him, watching him cook a complete meal of dal, rice, chapatis, and sabji. He cooked enough for all the devotees, and everyone was satisfied. Bad cooking and stolen clothes, however, continued to be the problem during Prabhupada's week-long stay in Nairobi. Brahmananda Swami found that Prabhupada was mostly absorbed in his Bombay project. "The only reason I've come," Srila Prabhupada told Brahmananda Swami, "is to get you for this." Once he asked Brahmananda Swami, "Which is the most important city in India?" "Calcutta," Brahmananda replied. "Calcutta?" Prabhupada looked at him oddly. "Don't you know Bombay is number one? Delhi is number two, and Calcutta number three." Prabhupada encouraged Brahmananda Swami to return with him and take charge of the Bombay project. This Bombay project, he said, would be unique within ISKCON, incorporating the religious with the cultural in a gorgeous temple, international hotel, theater, and diorama exhibition. Seeing Prabhupada's strong desire, Brahmananda Maharaj agreed to somehow relinquish his Nairobi responsibility to others and help in Bombay. In yet another way, Prabhupada's visit to Nairobi connected with his Bombay project. When Brahmananda Swami and Chaivana showed Prabhupada the Nairobi Hilton, a modern building with 2 round towers, Prabhupada liked the design and wanted to give it to his architect for the Bombay Hotel and Temple. Prabhupada, Brahmananda Swami, Bhagavat, and an African devotee were walking in Nairobi's public garden. On being introduced to Prabhupada, the African had inquired, "If I want to, can I get married?" "Oh yes," said Prabhupada. "But Prabhupada," the boy continued, "if you want to get married in our community, the boy has to pay money to the father of the bride." This was exactly the opposite of the Vedic system. Prabhupada replied, wherein the father of the bride presents a dowry to his son-in-law. Hearing this, Prabhupada's new disciple looked worried. He asked, "Then will you give me money when I want to get my wife? Because I am not working now, I am just working for you. When I want to get my wife, will you give me money?" Prabhupada shook his head. "You don't worry about all of this," he said. "Whether you'll get a wife or whether you'll get money, all this or all that, later on when it's time, you will get married. I will bring one American girl and you will marry her." Whenever Prabhupada turned to his fledgling Nairobi temple, he found neophyte disciples and discrepancies. Walking into the brahmachari ashram, he found books, boards, and paint cans scattered across the room. When he said things should be kept more neatly and orderly, The temple commander, Hare Kripa, replied, "Prabhupada, I tried to tell them, but these boys don't listen to me." Prabhupada bent down and picked up some pieces of wood. "If they don't do it," he said, "then you should do it. Put these over there." And Prabhupada began to engage all the men present. Within 5 minutes, the room was neat. The World Hare Krishna Movement Festival at Nairobi Center Stadium was a combination success and failure. Although Brahmananda Swami had managed to see many high-posted government officials and diplomats, many of whom had promised to attend the festival, none of them actually appeared, except for Mr. Y. Kamora, Kenya's Director of Education. But an audience of several hundred attended Kirtana, heard Prabhupada's speech, and took prasadam. Although devotees had invited the leading Kenya citizens to enhance the glorification of Krishna, their honored guests, Mr. Komora used the opportunity to speak in praise of Kenya. Nevertheless, he spoke highly of Prabhupada and the Krishna conscious movement. Regarding Bhagavad Gita, he said, "Your learned founder has made this great book available in the English tradition with an erudite commentary." Srila Prabhupada also attended other engagements in and around Nairobi. He told his Nairobi disciples that in preaching to the Africans, they should stress the chanting of Hare Krishna by holding public kirtans. Lord Chaitanya, he said, spoke philosophy only with learned scholars like Sanatana and Rupa Goswami, not with ordinary men. Just chant Hare Krishna, he said. This should be appreciated. Prabhupada installed the deities of Radha Krishna and named the Nairobi temple Kirata Sudhi, a place for purifying the Aborigines. One day shortly after the deity installation, however, Prabhupada walked into the temple room and was shocked to find the deities out of their proper place in the center of the altar. Krishna was standing to the far left beside the bottom step leading up to the altar, and Radharani stood to the far right. "Who has done this?" Prabhupada cried out loudly. Bhagavata came running into the temple room. He was also astonished. "Who has put Radha and Krishna 10 miles apart?" Prabhupada demanded. "Don't you know these things? How many times do I have to teach you?" Bhutabhavana suddenly appeared, admitting that he was the culprit. "Why are they so far apart?" Prabhupada asked. "I don't know, Srila Prabhupada," said Bhutabhavana. "I guess I just forgot. I was being rushed to go to the festival." "So," Prabhupada demanded, "does that mean they should be put out on the street?" Bhutabhavana froze, unable to reply. Prabhupada relented. "Take them and put them together," he said. "They should not be moved more than 3 inches apart. Now do it nicely." After a week, Prabhupada left Nairobi and returned to Bombay. He had gone there to get Brahmananda Swami, and he had accomplished his mission. "Unless you agree to take charge," Prabhupada said, "I cannot go ahead and pay so much money." Now it is decided. He felt new hope. Prabhupada envisioned his Bombay project as extraordinary within ISKCON. Within ISKCON. And even among all the temples of India. Many of the details and the projects already existed within his mind, but he needed competent disciples to carry them out. He was still the lone leader of ISKCON, forging ahead to bring into reality new phases of the Krishna consciousness movement. His disciples were behind him, but it was always he who led. Even when he wanted his disciples as leaders of various ISKCON projects, they sometimes could not handle the responsibility. Therefore, Srila Prabhupada had gone to Nairobi in the mood of the disciple. Of the Bengali aphorism he sometimes quoted, "If you want to accomplish a thing, do it by your own hand." So by his own hand, he had taught Brahmananda Swami. He had brought Brahmananda Swami from Nairobi to Bombay. And simultaneously, he had benefited the devotees and the general populace of Nairobi. Bombay, February 8, 1972. Prabhupada met with Mr. N and reiterated that he wanted to move onto the land as soon as Mr. N received the second 50,000 rupees. Mr. N, however, stood firm on his agreement, and Prabhupada put the matter into the hands of his lawyer, Mr. D, for legal processing. Although Prabhupada was making all the managerial decisions, he wanted the GBC secretaries to take on the responsibility of these practical affairs. He thought it better to use his energy in writing and translating books. "If you GBC do everything nicely," he told his secretary Shyamasundar, "then my brain will not be taxed, and I can utilize my time completely to produce further books. I can give you Vedas, Upanishads, Puranas, Mahabharata, Ramayana, and so many. There are so many devotional works in our lives by the Goswamis. This administrative work is taking too much time. I could be discussing philosophy. My brain is being taxed day and night. Because of this, I am neglecting my real work." Aside from directly managing the Indian projects, Prabhupada was answering as many as a dozen letters daily from devotees around the world. "Why do they keep writing, asking so many questions?" he asked his secretary. "The devotees prefer to ask you personally," Shamsundar said, "because the GBC men don't always know the right answer." "They know everything by now," Prabhupada replied. "I have given you everything. If they don't know the answer, they can find it in my books. Now I am an old man. Let me settle down to philosophy. All day reading letters, doing business, all night signing letters. This is not right. I want to be free from all these things. The GBC can do everything now." But it wasn't possible. As soon as Prabhupada was sensed that one of his devotees was being cheated, he would immediately become actively involved. And his disciples continued to write him regarding important business and managerial decisions. Nor would he discourage them. His desire for retirement and exclusive literary work remained, but it seemed to be only a wishful thought, a dream. If ISKCON were to develop, then there seemed little scope for his retirement. After the meeting with Mr. N, Prabhupada prepared to leave for South India for a 5-day Pando program in Madras. Also on his itinerary were visits to Calcutta, Mayapur, and Brindavan. As he prepared to leave Bombay, he felt happy that ISKCON would soon occupy the new Juhu property, and he frequently spoke of his plans. ISKCON would erect a fabulous temple and form a cooperative housing society of devotees of Krishna, the first ISKCON city. Respectable men would purchase flats in ISKCON's high-rise condominium. Devotees would have to become expert to develop and operate such a complex. And as they became successful, they would introduce the new pattern in other cities. Businessmen and professional workers could live as devotees in a co-op society, housing their families and sending their children to an ISKCON school. Prabhupada talked of constructing an international hotel, something like a Holiday Inn, suitable for foreigners and traveling businessmen, yet reserving a floor for ISKCON Life members who would receive free accommodations. The restaurant would be managed by expert Brahmana cooks. They would prepare dozens of different preparations of sumptuous prasadam. The deities, Radha Rasa Vihari, would receive 52 offerings daily, and the prasadam would be distributed to residents and guests. To start things in the right direction, Prabhupada ordered the devotees to immediately arrange for a 10-day public festival on the new land. First, Brahmananda Swami should pay the agreed balance and move into the land, along with all the devotees and the deities, Radha Rasa Vihari. Then they should prepare a big pandal tent and arrange a full program, as had been previously in Bombay, in Calcutta, and Delhi. Prabhupada wanted everything ready for his return in 2 weeks. Although, as Prabhupada would sometimes mention, in South India, the original Vedic culture was almost intact, was most intact, and had not been there, and he had not been there in several years. Most of the great acharyas, Shankara, Ramanuja, and Madhva, had come from South India. And Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, during his touring, had found South India especially favorable. Just after the Hare Krishna Pandal in Delhi, on the eve of Prabhupada's first tour of Brindavan with his disciples back in November of 1971, Achyutananda Swami, Brahmananda Swami, and Giriraja had volunteered to go to Madras to arrange a preaching program for Srila Prabhupada. While Achyutananda Swami had informed Prabhupada of the plan, Prabhupada asked, "Oh, are you now going to Brindavan with us?" "ISKCON is Brindavan," Achyutananda had replied. Yes, Prabhupada said, my Guru Maharaj used to think like that. But which do you want to do? Giriraj had asked, what is the better service? I want to put on a pandal in Madras. Prabhupada had replied, that would be more pleasing. Madras, February 11, 1972. Prabhupada, accompanied by 20 disciples, arrived in Madras and immediately took part in a parade through the streets. The parade, led by a decorated elephant and marching band, followed by the devotees, kirtan, featured Prabhupada riding in an old flowered-covered American limousine. Prabhupada stayed as the guest of Mr. Balu, a Madrasi businessman, for 3 nights in the large hall packed with 5,000 people. Prabhupada lectured in English. One evening, he told a story from the Chaitanya Charitamrita of an illiterate South Indian Brahmana whom Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu recognized for his staunch devotion to his spiritual master and to the Bhagavad Gita. Tissue. A piece of tissue. The next morning, and each subsequent morning, the Hindu, one of Madras's 2 leading newspapers, printed a full summary of Prabhupada's lecture. The other principal newspaper gave a more general account of A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami's arrival and the parade with his Western followers. The large 3-day program was followed by more select gatherings sponsored by Mr. K. Veeraswamy, the Chief Justice of Madras. Attending the function were judges, lawyers, and other leading citizens of the city. Several thousand people gathered beneath the open pandal as Prabhupada spoke about Rupa Goswami and Sanatana Goswami of Vrindavan, who had given up their important government position to join the movement of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Indirectly, Prabhupada was requesting all the attending leaders of Madras to join the Krishna conscious movement. Prabhupada was aware that his audience, although respectful, was steeped in impersonalism. Deep-seated conviction that impersonal Brahman was supreme, and that all Hindu gods were equal manifestation of the one. Srila and Prabhupada ended his talk by imploring his audience to accept Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. His appeal was so urgent and humble that some members of the audience actually repeated aloud, "Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead." The Hindu editor and publisher, Mr. Kasturi, was in attendance, and he printed, thank you, a detailed summary of Prabhupada's speech in the next day's paper. In attendance, in addition to the usual news coverage, Srila Prabhupada held a press conference at a Madras hotel. Already happy with the press coverage, he appealed further to the room full of reporters. Giriraj. Prabhupada wasn't speaking to them as if they were newspaper reporters. Usually a newspaper reporter has a stereotyped idea of whom he is, and you giving an interview. So you have a stereotyped idea of who you are, and you answer his questions thinking of how it will be published. But I could see that Prabhupada was speaking to these reporters as spirit souls, as individual persons who are meant to be devotees of Krishna. Even though they were addressing him as newspaper reporters, he was answering them in a completely different way. He was encouraging them and saying, "This reporting that you have done is very nice. Krishna will bless you. Please help spread this movement." They were asking questions, thinking of his answers in terms of something to publish in the newspaper. But Prabhupada took it that they were spirit souls reaching out towards Krishna consciousness, and he was answering them in that way. Within a few days of Prabhupada's arrival, the whole city was feeling the presence of the Hare Krishna movement. Prabhupada scarcely slept, using the early morning hours for translating, even after his late night speaking engagements. He would go from place to place all day with great vitality, outdoing his young followers. Prabhupada's host, Mr. Balu, although a prominent businessman, was also well known as a religious man. He received Prabhupada warmly and respectfully according to proper Vedic etiquette. Prabhupada noted that Mr. Balu had his own temple with beautiful Radha Krishna deities and a large tulsi plant. When the devotees accompanying Srila Prabhupada asked Mr. Balu why the deities were often dressed in black, he replied that they were so effulgent that if he didn't dress them in black, he wouldn't be able to look at them. He did not make prostrated obeisances to his deities because he and his wife were Krishna's father and mother, he said. And how can the father pay obeisances to his own son? Prabhupada and his hosts related to each other graciously. But one night, Mr. Balu and his wife came to Srila Prabhupada and asked him to please speak about the Rasa Leela of Radha Krishna. Prabhupada replied that the Rasa Leela, being the most exalted spiritual topic, was meant only for liberated souls. Only one completely free of material desire, Prabhupada explained, was fit to hear the Rasa Leela. No, Swamiji, Mr. Balu insisted. My wife and I are very keen. You must recite Rasa Leela. Again, Prabhupada described the exalted position of the Rasa dance, repeating that only when one is completely free from material attachment to wife, family, home, and money could one become fit to hear of Krishna's Rasa dance. Mr. Balu then folded his hands and politely repeated, Swamiji, my wife and I plead with you, please recite Rasa Leela. Then Swami replied, well, if you might be fit to hear Rasa Leela, Well, you might be fit to hear Rasa Leela, but I do not feel that I am qualified to speak of it. So kindly ask someone else. Prabhupada met previously with various important citizens of Madras. If the leader of society become Krishna conscious, he would explain, then they, by their example, would create Krishna consciousness in the general populace. Never compromising, never flattering his important visitors, he tried to impart Krishna consciousness to whomever he met. He met with the governor of Madras, K. Shah, a staunch Mayavadi and follower of Shankaracharya. Patiently, Prabhupada tried to teach him Krishna consciousness, but the governor would interrupt with his own philosophy. When Prabhupada asked him to somehow help the Krishna conscious movement, the man replied that as governor, there was nothing he could do, since everything was in hands of the chief minister. Residing in Madras was an elderly scholar and former leading politician who had written several books and translations of Vedic philosophy. From the impersonal point of view, Prabhupada visited him, but the man was paralyzed and could only sit trembling without speaking. Prabhupada spoke for some time about personalism in the Gita. The old scholar sometimes responded with glimmer in his eyes, but he could only make incoherent sounds. Previously, Prabhupada had criticized this man's translation of the Gita, which declared that although Krishna says surrender unto him, we do not actually have to surrender unto the person Krishna, but to the impersonal, eternal principle within Krishna. The meeting seemed to have a strong effect on Prabhupada, and for days afterwards, he would sometimes soberly mention how the old Mayavad scholar was living almost like a vegetable. Srila Prabhupada also met with V. Raj Gopalacharya, Rajaji, who had been India's first chief executive after independence. A friend of Mahatma Gandhi, Rajaji was high in the public sentiment as a religious politician. Although in his 90s, he was alert and very sympathetic to Prabhupada's movement. Rajaji expressed only one doubt. Prabhupada had created such a huge institution that now his disciples might identify with the institution rather than with Krishna. If that were to happen, then by identifying with the institution, they would again fall into the same type of materialism or false identification as before. Prabhupada replied that because Krishna is absolute, Krishna and Krishna's institution are non-different. To identify with Krishna's institution was to identify with Krishna directly. Rajaji was satisfied by Prabhupada's answer, and after a pleasant conversation, the two friends parted. Prabhupada received an invitation to Chief visit Veera Swami's home. The two became friends, and the Chief Justice requested to join the Krishna conscious movement as soon as possible. He liked Prabhupada's followers, especially 3-year-old Saraswati, and gave her a 6-inch silver murti of Krishna playing the flute. Another evening, Mr. Veera Swami came to see Srila Prabhupada, and Prabhupada mentioned that he thought Saraswati was too young to have such a valuable silver murti, and that he had taken it from her and was going to give her another one. But while they were talking, Saraswati burst into the room and ran to her mother, crying, "Krishna is gone." Srila Prabhupada then called her forward and asked Saraswati, "Where is Krishna?" In anxiety, Saraswati replied, "I do not know. Somebody took him." Prabhupada replied, "But where is Krishna?" Saraswati replied, "I don't know." "Is he under the cushion?" Prabhupada suggested. And Saraswati ran over to the cushion Prabhupada pointed to. She picked it up, but Krishna was not there. "Is he on the shelf?" Prabhupada asked. Saraswati ran to the shelf, her eyes darting in all directions. "Where is Krishna?" Saraswati began appealing to the faces of all the devotees, glancing at their hands, looking back behind their backs, stretching, searching everywhere. Prabhupada, intently watching Saraswati, began reciting a verse by the six Goswamis. "Hey Radhe, Vrajadevike, Chalalite Hey, Nanda Suno Kuta." This is the mood of the Goswamis, he said. They never said, "Now I have seen God. Now I am satisfied." No, rather, they were saying, "Where is Radha? Where is Krishna? Where are you all now? Are you all on Govardhan? Are you under the tree? On the bank of the Jamuna? Where are you?" In this way, they expressed their mood in Krishna consciousness. Saraswati's anxiety had become heightened to the point of tears. One of the devotees hinted, "Saraswati, where is Krishna? Who has Krishna?" Saraswati's eyes widened. She exclaimed, "Prabhupada has Krishna." And she rushed to Prabhupada, convinced that he was holding Krishna. And Prabhupada reached behind his seat and pulled out the small Krishna murti, similar to the silver Krishna he had taken from her. "Here is Krishna, Saraswati," Prabhupada said. Saraswati was in ecstasy. All the devotees were struck by Prabhupada's exchange of devotional feelings with even a small child. By his expertise, he had created within her a mood of separation from Krishna. Prabhupada continued explaining to the chief minister about the mood of separation from Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki. So just to conclude, believe it or not, this past time that happened, I was sitting right there in that room. And little Saraswati, she was going behind all of us. And she was looking for Krishna at that same time. And one of the devotees hinted to her that Prabhupada has the deity of Krishna. That's where she ran up there. And a lot of these events, actually, I was there in the association. And so this is the past. And we're relishing the past. From the past, we are able to experience right now the future of what was conceived in Prabhupada's mind here, the glory that was to take place. And how many offerings do we offer now to Radha Rasa Bihari? Huh? 56. 50. And we see the future also, that the temple actually is still being built. And actually, Krishna is still building the temple. The temple is still being built. Because we walk out and we see that this is where the temple ends. But you know, when I was here, at this time, before I remember, when Prabhupada was talking about the land, we couldn't imagine this here. But at that time, now this is the future. So what I'm hinting at is that actually we can see in the future, when you go down the road, all of that is Hare Krishna land. One day, it'll all be Hare Krishna land. Haribol? Haribol! So the Juhu temple is still being built. Don't think that Krishna is just standing right there, he's just standing there. Krishna's actually walking around here. He's doing things. He's making plans with the president, the vice president, the pujari, the devotees. All of us, Krishna's engaging us to continue spreading Krishna consciousness and to expand Juhu. Keep on growing. Because this was Prabhupada's mood and Prabhupada's idea. Haribo. Srila Prabhupada ki.